Hello guys, this is a recent surf casting trip. We're now on the way to dig some bait, and yeah, we're just cruising through the country lanes, and we're not actually going that fast. It's a little sports car, so it looks like it's going a lot faster than what it actually is, but yeah, it's quite good fun to drive. But yeah, it usually takes me about an hour just to sort of get to the grounds where I dig my bait. I do like fresh lugworms. You will catch on other bits and pieces, but it's something about the lugworm that really does pick off the fish. And we're just walking out onto the sands here. This is Norfolk, and there's loads here. And usually you can get down onto somewhere where you can dig some bait around about halfway down the tide, but this is probably about 3/4 of the way down on the ebb. Generally some bigger worms closer to the actual shore at low tide, but we got about, I'm not sure how many we got there, we probably got about 80 I would say, and crammed all the gear in there, and got to the beach, helicopter flying around above. Don't know what that was all about, whether they're after me or what, I don't know. Some pre-tied rigs there.
So that's a solid one, I think. There's solid ones, two solid ones there. Put that on, there's a 2 and a 1-0, 2 and a 1-0. 2, I have some, there's a 1, they're ones. There's 3 little ones on there.
Yeah, so if you use the ones, you're going to pick off your flatfish.
Got an alpine style today.
Alpine style, he says, meaning one rod, going light,
There's a bit of rough ground like this, so I could snag up.
not really bringing a hell of a lot of gear.
So all you do, because it's pretty tight, you just
Just unravel it and tie it on. It just speeds up the process and just saves a bit of time on the beach. So the tide's just starting to come in. High water is about right near the very top there, so you can see how deep it gets. At high tide there, you can maybe in a few more weeks' time and get bass really close in there on that shelf there, looking for food. But it's a good little spot. There's a bit of rough ground out there, so you've got to know where to go. You could, if you didn't know it, you could lose a bit of gear. But yeah, just clip it on the 5-ounce lead. And with the 5-ounce lead, it doesn't dig into the sand so much, which is nice. Sometimes it's only £15 line. Sometimes with a heavier lead on, with a lot of tide. There's a big tide that day. There was a big tide just a few days ago. The sand, it can sort of dig into the sand, and if you've got light 12, £15 line, you can on a stiff rod like that, relatively stiff. That's actually a match rod, but I find the lighter lead you can. If it's not too rough, the lighter lead works well, and the wind's behind us, so we're still getting distance. So it's nice with that reel as well. And there's plenty of fish about. There's plenty of fish, mainly all whiting. Some dabs. I think we had a pout as well, but we had fish. I had 3 hooks on it, fish every cast, so probably had 50 fish.
Microscopic whiting.
Is early spring, so it doesn't start improving for another. The water's got to warm up a little bit more, but it's a good spot to go to for dabs. There's plenty of dabs there. If you're not used to catching dabs, just with small hooks, lugworm. Yeah, so worth trying a live pouting or something for a bass in May, especially along this area.
I've got this
with the sleeper rod out.
Dale line here. I'm starting to regret using this leader because forgot that it twists a bit. It's just my head. So, amnesia better, little twist.
Yeah, so
I
we're
laid at about 2 o'clock. What's it like, 10 or 11? It's like a jammer. Looking to release the magnets as well. Aim at high and then release the magnets off.
a good distance with the wind behind.
Little magnet stay.
Yeah.
Might have. Tiny little place there.
There's got a few orange spots on it. They're definitely dabs.
That's a little place.
It's not a place.
Might be just a dab. I think it's a dab.
Transparent as a dab.
See the little.
It's a good feed. You can see all his belly look. Yeah, it's a bit early yet. Just a few more weeks. We'll start getting a few more bass turn up there. And peeler crab or lugworm close in for the bass, not far out at all, sort of 20-30 yards. If it's quite choppy, then you can probably cast a bit further out, but they generally feed. It's just nice to be out, nice to get a bit of sun. I mean, I haven't seen a blue sky like that in God knows. Maybe just over the weekend, but oh dear. Yes, it's nice to get a bit of sun in the eyes. Yeah, I used to fish 2 rods a lot, but it's just carrying the gear and stuff. I'm just getting tired and tireder with it. But if you're bass fishing, I would say 2, and you could probably fish just like that to see what was there to get your live baits, and then
really good.
another rod just to fish a live bait, just close in. So the tide is coming in, so it's coming from the left in this picture, and obviously the wind is coming the other way, so you could argue it's wind against tide there. There's no weed. Probably takes about 20 minutes from the car park to get to that spot. Now this is the live bait. That's the sort of thing you'd want to put on a big single hook, right through the nose, and just flick it about 10 or 15 yards out, and that would be my way. Don't just leave it the entire session on a paternoster. That would be how you'd snare a good bass along there. Nailed the lugworm. I actually thought the hooks were actually probably slightly too big for those dabs, but they no problem at all. Size 1, right down the throat. Just to think, use a 4 or a 2, had to be a 2 or a 4 or something like that to get the real small soles and stuff like that. But the size 1, that's good for everything really. The size 1, I mean, you'd even get a good bass on the size 1. So single rod spike, again, the idea of it, walking a long way, nice and light, like one reel, one rod, one rod rest, tiny little bag, and a bucket with your bait. The only thing I would argue is with the fresh lugworm in there like that on a warm day in spring, it will have a tendency to go off. So maybe if you put it in some sort of a cooler or something like that with some ice blocks underneath it, or what I was doing here, just putting some salt water in there, just to keep them with the sun on them. They do sort of start to go a bit jellified. Because they were only dug a few hours before, it wouldn't matter. But if you brought some that are a few days old, or been in your fridge for a while, so we've got a treble shot here. Of dabs, which is always nice. Held matches along here as well. And see why. yeah, so keeping your bait fresh is key, especially lugworm. Not too much crab activity out there at all, not from what I could see. I did fluff up a cast and it dropped in short, and I just left it there for a while, and the rod tip was bouncing around, and all the other fish had just been hooking themselves, so there must have been a few crabs out there. Didn't see any seals. There was no weed. This was a big tide at the bottom of the range, so we already had several days of some really big tides, and this was just like the last day of the sort of a biggish tide, which I do prefer sometimes. Sometimes it gives it a chance for a lot of the weed to be swept away, or to be put onto the beach, but there was not really been any storms or anything, so there was no weed there. So I could argue you could have fished a few days before anyway, but it's just, I do sometimes prefer the back end of the tides. There's plenty of fish there, but yeah, I think the next week or a few days after, the tides ease off, and in my opinion, I wouldn't, if you don't go all the time, I wouldn't fish on those tides. I would only fish over the biggest tides. New moon preferred, the full moon is okay, as long as there's plenty of tide there pulling. Whether you're ebbing or flooding, don't really make too much difference really. Yeah, so with the calm sea and the wind, we could, we were sort of getting out quite a way, and this is approaching high water. I'd say another hour and a half until high water there, maybe. Just pinging it out. No rain. Plenty of little bugs flying around in that top bit there where the weed is. So I wouldn't advise sitting down in there. Find trainers when it's it's not raining or anything. I prefer the most comfiest things on shingle beaches. There's nice pair of trainers. Wear wellies and stuff like that, but I just find comfort. Something about the trainers, they're nice and light. Obviously the jacket just to keep the wind off, but it was times when I had to take the jacket off, but it was sort of mixing up. Just getting near high water. Probably another 40 minutes, 45 minutes until high. And yeah, so it's the fish ain't huge. It's just something to, pass the time of day sort of doing. This was in the week, so you don't get all the hordes of people walking up and down the beach, which I find I do have to do a lot of my fishing at the weekends, but if I'm beach fishing at the weekends, it's going to be at night time. So in the week, you can fish in light. But yeah, so we weren't really expecting, we were just targeting the flatfish really. But in a few weeks' time, that'll be a different game plan. There'll be hopefully some bigger bass about. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed watching the video. I'll probably do some tench fishing next, just to start to warm up a little bit. But we'll just be keeping an eye on the conditions to see what we can do. But the bass, usually the last week of April is when I would seriously start to consider going for the bigger bass. Stretch the coast. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed it. It was nice to be out. Many more videos along the way. And see you on the next one.